So something a bit different. I'm going to review one of my own cars today. Behind me is my Holden Calais VE. This is actually my daily driver, which I drive most of the time. Before I get to the car and showing you around the car, a bit about Holden for those who don't know. So Holden is an Australian brand that has been around since the early 20th century. So around the 1901 or 1902, Holden started. In about 1930, GM bought Holden, and you started to see some of the GM-owned cars like the Opals and the Chevrolets come and be rebadged under the Holden brand. But this car behind me, this is completely designed in Australia, built in Australia from the ground up. And after this year, the Holden brand will actually no longer exist. So GM have decided to stop using the Holden brand altogether. One more thing before I take you around the car. If you live in Australia and want me to review your car, please put some comments down and I'd be more than happy to review your car for you. So having a look at the outside of the car, I think this has aged pretty well. This car is now 13 years old. I've had it since brand new and I still reckon it's looking pretty modern and sort of not looking too outdated. But taking a look at it, one of my favorite things about this car is the 20-inch wheels. These 20-inch wheels were factory optioned at the start. They're called the Super Sport wheels. The only thing that I don't like about them is there wasn't much thought taken into account when I think they designed these wheels. They are only 8 inches wide, which means you get limited to the size of rubber that you can actually fit on them. I've got 245 here on the front. It actually came with 245 all around this car. And you can see I've sort of upgraded the brakes there. It's the same size disc. It's just obviously got slotted and cross-drilled discs in there. They've got a strange offset. It's very hard to actually fit anything bigger under these wheels, unfortunately. So just taking you around to the back of the car here, I've upgraded the tires on the rear here. So these are 275s on the rear. They've just squeezed in there on those 8-inch wheels, and I couldn't squeeze anything wider on the rear there, even if I tried. So taking a look around the back here, you can see with the quad exhaust there, it does look quite aggressive, and you can sort of come into the back of it here, you can see it's probably not your standard family saloon, something a bit more sporty. You can see the badging there, so this is a Calais V. The V was brought out in this model as V being the sports version. Before that, Holden didn't have any Vs or anything like that, but they brought that V badging out, and that basically meant it was more of a sports model. The Calais V being the flagship of all the Commodore badges and also the most expensive one. For that, you've got the executive, and then you've got the Berliner, and then you've got a sports version, which is the SS, and then you've got the Calais, then the Calais V. So coming out, look at around the side here, as you can see, the car sits fairly low, so I have had it lowered slightly. It did come with sports suspension on it, but then I thought that it could sit a bit more lower, so I did my research and found a sort of spring that actually worked to sit not too low, but just sit like nice low and even more sporty than it sort of already looked. So coming around the front here, just to take you around and look at the front, and you've just got your standard body kit there. So from the front there, it really doesn't look too much sporty. You've got the sort of a wider fenders that make it look nice and aggressive there. You've got the fog lights there, and then you obviously got the chrome bits and pieces, which is sort of the Calais side of things. And then we'll have one more look around the outside here before we check the car out and what it's like inside. Before I show you around the inside of the car, I thought that there's something I might show you or let you hear is the actual engine. So this has got a V8 6-litre engine in it, and I reckon it sounds awesome. So we'll rev it a bit. So you can hear that nice sounding V8, and you can see it just rumbling along here. So obviously sounds really, really good. So we'll just try that once more. Just you can hear that really loud V8 noise there. Inside the car, as I said, the car is 13 years old. I still think it looks quite nice inside, but you can see it's starting to get outdated. Nice cream colored leather interior. I don't know if I like the perforated seats anymore. I think it's starting to get a bit outdated, but I still think it looks nice and luxurious. It's got the heads-up display here, which has since moved a bit higher, so it's a bit ergonomically better for the driver when looking at things like satellite navigation and things like that. This does have sat-nav in it. Again, it's a bit outdated, but it's still got quite a fair few options here. So it's got the sat-nav in there. It's got still the 6-stacker CD there. You've got just your buttons there, obviously your control for the satellite navigation, so no touchscreen or anything like that, and going between your menus. Then you've got your air conditioner down there as well. You've got the gear stick here. This is an automatic. Unfortunately, they didn't bring these out in a manual at all. It is got Tiptronic there, as you can see. And then you've got things like your traction control, your front and rear parking sensors, which you can turn off or on. And then there's a sports mode there. If you can go in either sports mode, or you can just put it in Tiptronic and take it in the sports mode there. You've got your window controls here, along with the electric mirrors there as well. You've usually got some cup holders. You've got your standard handbrake that you can pull up here. This one's got a sunroof, so you've got all your sunroof controls up here as well. Then you've just got your glove box there on the steering, back around here on the steering wheel, so you can answer the phone. It's got full Bluetooth connectivity. You've got your volume button there. You can go between sort of the different radio stations or the trip computer down here, and you can track between the different radio stations here. No Tiptronic at all on here at the steering wheel level. I said only through the gearbox there. This has got cruise control on it, so you can set the cruise control down the back there. You can just see it there. And then you've got the wipers and things like that. Having a look at the instrument cluster, as you can see, it's got your speedo, your revs, and the engine temps, and then the fuel. And then you can go through a few different trip and nav, different options here. So how many kilometers the car's got on it, how much I've driven on it recently, set some overspeed on it. You can digitally see how fast you're going. And if I had something in the navigation, it would show me turn by turn of the navigation there. Down here, you've got full electric seats. Both front seats are fully electric. So let's go jump in the back and see what the back looks like. Being a family car, you'd expect it to have heaps of room, and it does, I can tell you that now. So you've got heaps of space here. You can see the remote down there. That's actually for the DVD player up here. If you've got kids in the back, you can actually watch the DVD in there. It comes down, you control it here. You can put your DVDs go up in there, so you can change all the DVDs from the back here. You've obviously got your lights as well that you can control here as well. If the car's not moving, the front screen also has the option of showing the DVD player. So just click that back up there. See, there's a baby seat in there, and you've still got heaps of room in that middle seat. This can comfortably seat 3 adults in the back here. And again, finished off quite nicely. Some of you probably thinking, you know, it's starting to look a bit outdated, and yes, it is 13 years old now, but you know, I still think it's looking quite nice and new, and it still it's not looking too outdated. Like, you know, you don't get in it, and I haven't heard of people saying, like, this is a 13-year-old car. But most people, when I tell them how old this is, they're quite surprised. And obviously this car's in quite good condition as well. And you've also got the rear air conditioning ducts there and some rear storage at the back. You've got your center sort of armrest here in the middle back here. You do get some cup holders. You've got the bit of the ski chute there for the boot, and then you've got the 2 cup holders there. So you've got your armrest or the cup holder option. You just put that back up. You've got adjustable headrests at the back here as well. Now, one thing I don't like about this car is that you can't lay all the seats flat. So if you want to put something big in here, you can't actually lay the seats completely flat. That's really annoying. Showed you before, you can put that the middle bit down, but you can't put the left or right seats fully down. So I think that's the one annoying part. Take a look at the boot space. So back at the back here again. So from the remote or in the glove box, you can open the boot. Doing it from the remote here. We're opening it here. You can see it's a big size boot, heaps of room there, and I can tell you can fit a lot in there. You've also here you've got a bit of a carry bag area at the bottom, which you can put groceries and things like that, so they don't rock around the boot as well. This has got a 12-volt socket if you want to charge anything, and it's also got the full size 20-inch spare in there as well, which is handy, and you rarely see a full size spare these days. And you can also use that for extra luggage space if you did need it. So I might also show you the engine, as it's a V8 and it's got a nice big engine. Like I said, this has got a V8 6-litre in it. You can see this has had some small modifications to it. So I put an over the radiator air intake to let it breathe better. Previously the air intake was there. If any of you want to know what that is a HID ballast. So I've upgraded the rear projectors, which it's got in there, and put some HIDs in there. So that's what that is. You can see that's a big nice V8 engine in here. Things like the fuse box and stuff like that. The rest is sort of a fairly standard sort of looking engine there, but I just thought I'd show you that engine in case any of you were interested. Before we take it for a quick drive, you've heard it from inside the car. So I'm just going to take you around to the rear of the car so you can hear the engine. Okay, before we start driving the car and I talk about some of the features and what the car's like to drive, I thought I'd just fill you in with a bit more history about the car, because obviously some of you watching this don't know much about this car. This car, when Holden released it, they called it the $1 billion baby, obviously after the movie named the $1 Million Baby. But the reason they called it the $1 billion baby was it was the most expensive car that Holden's ever developed, and they'd obviously spent $1 billion developing this VE platform. It came with a lot of excitement and things like that, and at the time when this car was coming out, people were comparing it with the likes of the top of the range Mercedes E-classes or the top of the range BMW 5 Series, but this car was pretty much half to a third of the price of those cars, where it had the sort of similar performance, not as good performance, but not far off, say, an M5 or the E63, but was a third of the price. So this is why it was so compelling to have this sort of a car. So that's just a bit of a background for those that don't know much about this car and sort of where it sits in the price range and against other cars. I'll start driving the car and then I'll have a bit of a talk about the features while driving the car. Right, firstly, before I start talking about the features, if you want to know a bit about the other Commodore, I have reviewed the newest Commodore, which is actually a rebadged Insignia. You'll see the link up above me for that video, so feel free to watch it. I'll start with the features of this car. This car, as I said, was the top of the range at the time, so it had a heap of features on it. Pretty much, even to this day, there's not too much missing from the modern cars. The only things I can think of that's missing that you now get in the modern cars is the cameras. This doesn't have any cameras, though it does have the rear sensors and the front sensors to it. It doesn't have any side assist, but personally, I didn't even use a side assist in my other car, and I find it actually more confusing than actually beneficial. It's got cruise control, but not adaptive cruise control on it. And then it's got most of the electronic safety features. It doesn't have electronic braking, but it's got the stability control and traction control and things like ABS and other things like that in the car. The stereo system, it's got an 11-speaker stereo system in it. It's a reasonable stereo system. It's got a sub here. It probably could, if I was, being a bit picky, it probably could have a bit more bass to it. It doesn't have the most deepest bass, but other than that, it's pretty good. The ergonomics of the car, again, there could have been a bit more thought in when they designed it. The infotainment system here, that is a bit low, so I put on the navigation system there, and you can see I feel it. You're going to take your eyes off the road to actually look at it. You can use the settings here to change things like volume, or if you back into the nav, if you're going in different menu options, you can change different menu options in there, but sometimes it does take your eye off the road. Other than that, everything's pretty easy to sort of get around. The cabin and things like that are all really around your hands, like nothing you have to stretch out too difficult. And then when you hop in the car, it's not too difficult to sort of figure out where everything is. Now, the visibility around the car is pretty good as well. I think there's not too many blind spots around the car. When this car was first released, one of the comments that people had was that it had quite a big A pillar. So that's this pillar here, and it was actually blocking some of their vision on that side. I honestly have never had a problem with it, and really never thought about it until I read it in a review once. Looking around the car, as I said, it's pretty good, and you rarely get a blind spot around the car at all. Mechanic side of things in this car, well, firstly, the car's been pretty reliable. To be honest, I've done about 135,000 Ks, so not a huge amount of Ks in the car for a car that's 13 years old. But as time goes on, doesn't matter how many Ks you do in the car, things just start to deteriorate. Parts on these cars are really cheap as well, so that's why these cars are really attractive. They're not expensive to service and not expensive upkeep. The only thing that's really gone on this car is the actual gearbox. So the gearbox went a few years ago and I had to get it rebuilt. So that was really the only major thing. Other than that, they're all very minor things. Since we're talking about the gearbox in this is a 6-speed gearbox. It's pretty good. It's not like a dual clutch gearbox or anything like that. It's not going to be like hugely really smooth changes and things like that, but it's a reasonably smart gearbox. So if you're going down a hill or something like that, it'll pick it up and it will start to hold a gear for you and things like that. So that's the gearbox. could be smoother, but not too bad. It's a 6-speed gearbox. The headlights in this car, they're really good. It's got rear projector headlights, as I think I showed you before, which I've upgraded to HID, but they're super bright. The brakes on the car, not too bad. They're a bit soft at times, so you've got to really push down the brakes sometimes compared to maybe some other cars to actually get it to really, the real stopping power on it. The handling in this car is really good. It's I've obviously lowered it, but even before I lowered it, it was still quite good. I'll give you an example of how it handles. One of my mates, we went for a drive a while ago. He's got a 911 turbo, and it's a 2004 model. We went around some nice roads with a lot of bends. I was able to stick with him the whole time, and he was pushing his 911 as well. And this car's 1.8 ton or 1,800 kilos, so it's not light, but it sits really flat on the curves. Performance wise, I'll show you some acceleration, and you can see sort of how it feels in the cabin. It's pretty good. Standard, these cars came out, they were doing 0 to 100 and anywhere between say 5.7 to 5.5. So these days that doesn't sound that fast, but back then that was pretty fast. This car's been modified. I talked about some of the modifications I've done in this. I showed you the over the radiator air intake. So I put some high flow ceramic coated extractors on it, or headers some people might call it. I've also put some high flow cats. The exhaust system's been upgraded to 3-inch exhaust system, and it's been tuned. This one standard was 270 kilowatts and 530 newton meters of torque. Since been upgraded, it's around 330 kilowatts and about 580 to 560 newton meters of torque. So obviously like a reasonable amount of power. And since the upgrades, the car's probably doing high to mid 4s to 100, and you know it does feel quite quick and quite as quick or even quicker than some of the cars I've driven that are mid 4s. So it's definitely still very quick. Before I show you the performance and the acceleration of the car, so just to touch on the fuel consumptions. The car is a V8, as I just said, so the fuel consumption is not going to be great. Around the city, you get anywhere between 18 to 21 litres per 100 kilometres, and that's in traffic and things like that. It's got a 72 litre tank, so you get around 300 to 350 to 400 in the city. If you take it on the highway, the fuel consumption actually becomes quite good, and it drops down a lot. So you get it down to about 9 litres per 100 kilometres, and you can get around 800 to 850 kilometres out of a tank on the highway, because really it's literally just idling on the highway. Like if I sit on 110 or 120 in this on the highway, you're sitting at well below 2,000 revs. You're sitting at 1.5 and sometimes even under 1.5. So the car's literally just idling. The ride of the car, as I talked about the handling, but the actual ride of the car, look, it's been lowered and it's also running on low profile tires. On your sort of highways and sort of regular smooth roads, it's pretty good. It's smooth, but as soon as you start going on the sort of those second grade roads, that's where the performance starts to fall down a bit, and you can start to sort of feel the bumps a lot more and things like that. Noise in the cabin, it's not too bad. Obviously you get the engine noise because it's got a big engine in and it's got an upgraded exhaust, but I did, when I put the exhaust on, was very careful with the type of muffler I put on it. So I put on bi-modular muffler from a HSV, which is a performance version of the Holden Commodore range. So it had been tested before, so there's not too much drone in the cabin at highway speed. So I'll just show you the acceleration quickly. So I put in the Tiptronic, as I think that's a bit better than the sports mode. The sports mode, all it does is sort of change the gear ratio, so it holds the gears a lot more when you're in sports mode. It doesn't change the suspension settings or anything. All right, just a bit of acceleration here. I'm in first, so we'll just take off here. See, it sounds quite good, just a change of gears. Pretty smooth there in second there. A bit of you feel the traction control coming in and things like that, but picks up really quickly. As you can hear the engine. It's got a nice sound there. Brakes, as you can see, pull it back pretty quickly, but it's a really fun car to sort of drive, and it does feel quite quick driving it. And rear wheel drive, you can also feel the back sometimes kick out and things like that if you're pushing it. That's the performance side of the car. What do I think of the car? For what the cost of this car is, when it was brand new, was around 65,000 Australian dollars, but you get a lot with that. You get big engine, performance engine, pretty much at the time I said every feature you could want. Showing you the cabin so you can see sort of what you get out of the cabin and things like that. And the car's also still really sporty, and I personally think it looks great. So I just think it's all in all, it's a bargain sort of a car. As I said, it's been really reliable over time, and it's still to this day fun to drive. In general, I think it's a really great car, obviously because I still own it, but it's also really good value for money as well. Performance in the engine, that V8 engine is great. Like, you know, you go up hills and things like that, and it just sort of eats hills, it eats up the highway, and you can't fault it at all. It's just a really, really good engine. Thanks for watching today.